With us now is Arizona Democratic Congressman Greg Stanton, who joins us from Phoenix. He is helping to lead the charge to speed up the refunds for taxpayers now that those tens of billions of dollars in tariffs have been ruled unconstitutional. Congressman, thanks for being with us. First, I want to get your take on the news. What do you make of these new 15% tariffs that the president has put in place?
Well, it's wrong. Look, the president tried to unilaterally issue the original tariffs at all different numbers across the country, so-called Liberation Day tariffs. They were illegal from day one. He never had the support of Congress. He needed to get the support of Congress. The Supreme Court did the right thing, reestablished checks and balances, told the president, no, you cannot do these tariffs unilaterally. You actually have to work with Congress. What a novel concept. And now the president, instead of accepting the Supreme Court decision, is trying to do an end around using what's called Section 122. That's a balance of payments type tariff that can only go into place for 150 days. It's illegal what he's doing right now. And there's going to be lawsuits challenging his use of the balance of payments because it is obviously an attempt to simply avoid Congress. If the president wants to issue this tariff regime, come to Congress, make your case, and let's see if you have the votes. That is how our Constitution demands this process happen.
Well, let's do the counterfactual. Let's run the thought experiment. There are a lot of Democrats who like the idea of tariffs. Republicans of the president's variety certainly like them. What would an acceptable tariff package look like? Is there something that you think would get through this Congress?
Sure. If you're trying to issue tariffs because another country is dumping products into the United States inappropriately, driving down prices, et cetera, there are certain instances where that makes sense, kind of like what happened with China and solar panels just a few years ago. But an across-the-board tariff regime in which countries across the globe then have to go to Mar-a-Lago or the White House and beg for an exemption for this particular tariff or that particular tariff, the president is not a king. He doesn't get to act unilaterally. This is an incredibly important decision. A tariff is a tax on the American people, and only Congress can vote on that tax. It is not a nice thing to have. It is a legally required thing to have congressional approval of any tax.
Okay, so let's talk about your bill. Everybody would like to be the guy that's telling people that they're going to get a tax rebate faster. What does your bill do? And do you think you can get any Republicans on board so that it has a real chance to be passed?
We sure think we can get Republicans on board. Look, we want to make sure there's almost $200 billion that have been collected under the illegal tariff. Those belong to the American people. Those belong to American small business. And we know that large businesses are going to be hiring an army of the highest priced lawyers trying to get first in line for those refunds. We don't want to put the American small businesses or the American people at a disadvantage. So this would require automatic refunds to the American people for those tariffs that were illegally issued by President Trump.
Okay, let's switch gears to your work on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Every sign that I can see seems to point to strike on Iran. The size of this, the air power that's being arrayed against the Islamic State is pretty mind-boggling. What do you think is going to happen, and what should happen?
Well, there's the largest buildup, as you pointed out earlier, the largest buildup since the Iraq War in that region. The president is still ongoing. His team is in ongoing negotiations with Iran over their nuclear program. Obviously, I hope, and I think the American people hope, that we can get a nuclear agreement through diplomacy. Diplomacy is always the best way of going about it. If the president decides that there's that he wants to take military action, he has no choice but to come to Congress. Very similar to what I just said about taxing and tariffs. Any decisions to go to war have to come to Congress.
Now, would that include the kinds of strikes that he used, or that he ordered against Iran's nuclear program?
Well, look, the president, under the War Powers Act passed over 50 years ago, during the Vietnam era, the president has to come to Congress and provide real consultation, brief us on what's going on, brief us on the plan. He didn't do that the last time. He needs to do that. It is a legally required part of our Constitution.
Okay. Not legally required, as part of the Constitution, is for the president to give a State of the Union in person. But it has been the reality for Americans for many generations now. Many of your fellow Democrats have already said that they're not going to attend Tuesday's State of the Union address. But we do expect that, as has been the case in both parties for many years now, that there will be protests. What are you doing, and what's the counsel you'd offer your fellow members about how to navigate Tuesday's address?
Well, every member has to make their own decision. I've been in Congress for 7 years. I've attended every single State of the Union, whether it's a Democratic president or a Republican president. I am a harsh critic of this president. He deserves harsh criticism. His policies are increasing prices on the American people. Health care costs are going through the roof because they won't reauthorize the tax credits for the Affordable Care Act. Millions of people are losing their insurance. I am a tough critic. But in my role in Congress, he's coming to our house. The Capitol is where the United States Congress does its work. He's coming to our house, so I will be there. I will listen to what he has to say, and then I will provide appropriate critique afterwards. And so that's what I plan to do. I plan to attend. I plan to listen appropriately and intently, and then provide my analysis afterwards. My guest, by the way, for the State of the Union runs a aluminum company in my district who is getting hammered by the tariffs. He's losing contracts. He's not able to hire the employees he needs. He's not able to do his business appropriately, build the American economy, because these tariffs have been crippling. I want to send that strong message to this president. You cannot continue to engage in this tariff regime, which are raising prices on the American people, without getting the approval of Congress. And my guest, Greg Fraley from Falco in my district, is a living embodiment of why tariffs are so bad on the American economy.
Okay, now to get back here to do your Article 1 gig, you're going to need to get on an airplane, and you're probably going to face long lines at Phoenix's Sky Harbor Airport with Homeland Security pulling back TSA pre-check. It's going to be a headache. How big of a pressure point is this in advancing negotiations to fund the agency?
Well, if they're doing it as a pressure point, it's totally inappropriate. We need to provide the service to the American people that they deserve, not just members of Congress. More importantly, the American people deserve those services. We could go back on Monday and fully fund TSA and all of the other entities covered by the Department of Homeland Security. It's really ICE that we are most concerned about, and the lack of control. Kristi Noem's incredibly poor leadership of ICE, the tragic death of 2 of our fellow Americans because of lack of training and lack of oversight and follow through. They need to take those masks off, have body cameras on if you're going to operate in the American streets. We need to have an appropriate use of force policy. There needs to be independent investigations. If you're going to go out, people expect targeted enforcement of our immigration policies, going after people that have committed violent crimes. This mass deportation policy put in place by less trained officers roving the streets of America. The American people, overwhelmingly, Republican and Democrats, say we reject that. That's what this fight is about, is to rein in ICE. President Trump needs to fire Kristi Noem because she is totally unqualified to lead this department. If not, we should impeach Kristi Noem. She is the worst possible leader for this department.
Congressman, we got to leave it there. All right, America, if you didn't have your head in the sand about next month's annual Ostrich Festival in Chandler, Arizona, you would know him already. But if you don't, there he is. Congressman Greg Stanton, we thank you.